Welcome to the Help Me on Middle Age podcast. My name is Rob.
And I'm Rob too.
And today our wonderful guest is Veronica Lee. She is a clinical social worker with over 13 years of experience in the industry. And we're glad to have her on. And our subject matter today is going to be talking about the emotional effects of COVID-19 and maybe it's the emotional effects of 2020 and how that's running through our society. There's so much anxiety, there's so much pain that's going on, suicide rates are rising, and we wanted to sort of like come from this at an angle of how people are feeling with their emotions and depression. And we wanted to bring on a professional who has a tremendous amount of experience. So thank you for coming on, Veronica. We really appreciate it. And if you could just tell our audience just a little bit about you before we get started.
Of course. Number one, I want to thank you guys for having me on. And just a short synopsis of what I've been working on the last 13 years. I've worked with kids with trauma, adults with trauma, substance abuse, sex offenders, criminal offenders, adults with persistent and chronic mental illness, along with mental health concerns and medical concerns. So just an array of experience. I'm very grateful to have been given the opportunity to just be in the field for so long and just try different things. I work with geriatric populations. So I can honestly say I kind of been around a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
Gotcha. So my first question is just because it's on top of mind is the communities who are vulnerable to substance abuse and the people who have been going through that. And I found it like very interesting that in New Jersey, because we can speak of that, and I think New York, liquor stores have been able to be remained open through this whole thing, but AA meetings have been closed due to social distancing and all of that stuff. So in those communities where people suffer from a tremendous amount of issues, have we seen some spikes? Have you, in your practice, have you seen, I mean, it must be incredibly tough not to have that communal gathering that people who are used to going through substance abuse are used to having. Have they been able to transfer to Zooms? Have you seen anything?
So yes, a lot of the New Jersey chapters have started online right away, pretty much right after everything started, Zoom. But you have to remember that, as we adjusted with Zoom, children adjusted to Zoom sessions. It's not easy to just go from one thing to the other, without maybe possibly getting a pre-introduction, or not everyone has the technology. Not everybody has a smartphone. We're talking about the population of substance abuse disorder usually tend to be from low income, neighborhoods, and don't have, smart technology to maybe do this, or just don't know how to use the technology. So it has severely affected the population for substance abuse, because not only have they not been able to have that community one-on-one, but then they're more isolated in that way. You don't have your sponsor to be able to go see and maybe have coffee to talk about this thing. And yes, phones are great, computers are great, but it really gives you that disconnect. It's like talking to a robot sometimes. And I think that we, even without mental illness or substance abuse, kind of feel that disconnect already. So imagine feeling even more isolated from the fact that you can't have your meeting. Yes, liquor stores were open the whole time, so that didn't really affect, but then you also have programs that were shut down, detox centers that for a little bit of time, I know they've reopened, we're not accepting new patients for fear of COVID. So people that were maybe seriously considering going into detox or had really relapsed severely were concerned about, going to the hospital to seek help, because everyone was so afraid with COVID, oh, if I go to the hospital, I might get affected with COVID anyway. So there's a lot of misconceptions, a lot of fear to kind of seek out treatment. And, with the isolation, a lot of people, this is a huge trigger. This is a huge stressor. So being triggered on top of not being able to go to a meeting, maybe talk about your, have that community support, not really understanding how to get online, or not feeling like it, not motivated to get onto the Zoom meetings. And possibly, knowing people around them that are sick, and then being more scared and more stressed about seeking out help, I think was a huge detriment in the mental health and substance abuse community.
Is this getting worse at this point, or is it like plateauing? Any idea?
It's actually been a very slow incline a little bit.
Yeah, like a build.
We're starting to see that, more and more people are relapsing severely. Again, because lack of being able to get treatment at this point. A lot of rehabs just reopened, are starting to expect people to come in. So that's been okay. We're also seeing a rise of people that maybe weren't considered substance abuse, maybe high functioning, like a high functioning alcoholic, that are now like are in need of treatment, because now it's gotten to the point where it's bad. And I say bad in the sense that it went from drinking, a glass of wine here and there, or maybe every day, to now drinking half a bottle of wine or a whole bottle of wine, or whatever alcohol choice that you typically drink when you're upset. It's a huge coping skill for a lot of people. We hear it all the time. Oh, I had a bad day, I'm going to go to happy hour. So that's okay. But then instead of there being like happy hour, people just went to the liquor store, stocked up on a lot of liquor, and now have no indicator, nothing to stop them. Some people out of work can drink now all night, don't have to wake up. So that's a huge one for a lot of people. They're like, yeah, it's time to drink, but it becomes almost like they have to drink because they're upset, and they're using it as a coping skill.
Yeah. Now, the other thing too is that if you're in that community and you're recovering, or maybe you're just, spiraling down, you have never sought help, but maybe you think you might after this, the pressure of losing a job, maybe the not getting, like, I know a friend of mine, something happened with his paperwork. He hasn't received any money from unemployment. So him and his wife are, it's kind of tough. They're getting by. But I'm sure there's a lot of issues like that around there. And then it just, people go down an avenue maybe they wouldn't have gone down if this wouldn't have happened. And it's just, I can't imagine how tough it's got to be. I mean, like, I'm complaining about the COVID-15, gaining a few pounds, but there's a lot of people out there with serious problems. So have you noticed, like Rob said, have you personally noticed a spike, or in amongst your colleagues? Have people willing to talk to you, or are they just scared because you can't see as many people one-on-one as you used to?
So it's been like half and half. So I want to say, because of teletherapy, right now we've been allowed in New Jersey since this whole pandemic to actually do teletherapy, which is something we really didn't have the capacity to, unless you got like a specific licensure, not licensure, but you had permission from the insurance companies, like you did the accreditation to do teletherapy. So when this whole pandemic happened, Governor Murphy signed a executive order allowing teletherapy, telehealth to start. So I think it's been interesting because more people now are seeking help, in the sense that it's more accessible with teletherapy. They don't have to go to an office. They don't have to schedule like, appointment, in the evenings or whatever. They try to schedule an appointment. But then there's also been this misconception, like, if you're stressed, right, and you start to do something like drinking alcohol every day, people can feel really ashamed if they have never suffered this, or they feel like this is a weakness. I'm weak now because now I'm drinking every single day. I'm not being productive, right? Also, the productivity level. People feel like if they don't have work, or they're not doing their regular routines, then now they're not being productive human beings. And that really, there's a lot of shame in general with mental health and substance abuse for seeking help, but I think it depends on the person and the supports they have, but I have seen more people willing to do therapy because the availability of the telehealth. They don't have to leave their house. They can do either video or phone call sessions. Um, but that's what I've been seeing. I have colleagues who have said that things have gone down. People are taking breaks because of finances. They may have lost their jobs. Now they have no coverage.
Right.
Or,
Yeah.
they think that taking a break during this time is, useful and productive for them because they feel like, oh, well, we can't see you in person, so it's not the same. There's some truth to that. It's not the same. I mean, we as clinicians have to adjust also to doing video sessions and, kind of doing
Yeah.
the phone calls. It's weird. You don't get to
Yeah.
see the body language as much. But I think that as the weeks gone by, people are becoming more open to it. It's not to say that the mental health or substance abuse issues have decreased. It's just getting people to kind of take that first step,
Yeah.
call their doctors, tell them I need help, or just in general research to try to find clinicians in the area that are open to doing therapy now.
Yeah. What about the different ages, like children, when you get the children at home learning, on the computer versus their typical interaction at work, at school, I should say. And are you seeing more children having issues, or is it more adults, or both? Or is their age group
It's
dependent?
Yeah, it's definitely both. I think, with children, yes, technology didn't really affect them, right? They use iPads, they use phones all the time. So using Zoom to them was like, okay, this is
Right.
what we do anyway. We YouTube, we do things, right? It's not a big adjustment for them. I think that with children, the anxiety came from maybe lack of communication with children directly about what's going on. This happens in general when there's something traumatic happening, in the community or bad news. Adults or parents tend to try to, not talk to their kids or kind of whisper in the corner, like,
Right.
stressed. They can see their parents being very stressed, either by finance, just in general, health. Um, and kids react to that. They feel that. You don't have to, tell them that something's going on. They can feel the vibes in the community. And then being abruptly pulled out of school the way they were. It went from like, we might shut down schools to like, we're just shutting down schools and we're going to start Zoom class. And I think that the dramatic change maybe, and I'm not saying this for all children, but if the parents or adults in the household aren't discussing this, like, this is what's happening, this is why we're doing this, why we're wearing masks now, why you can't go to the store with me for a while, why we can't have your play date with Johnny across the street. You know, if you're not having that open discussion, absolutely children are going to be severely affected from this. And we are seeing some children who may have already been anxious or slightly depressed in different ways. This definitely exacerbated it. But then for some children, it also depends on temperament too. Some kids are like, whatever, moving on.
Right. So let me ask you a question. So, the name of the podcast, Help Me, I'm Middle Aged, and not that you're anywhere near there. I mean, you got a long way to go. But for me and Rob, though, I mean, so
deep in it.
we're deep in it. We're deep. So, but I was thinking, like, when I was a kid, there would be no worrying about like your feelings or like. I feel like we've grown so much as a society, right? Like any of these concerns that we're talking about, I don't remember them even being talked about publicly in the 80s. And I feel like they were underlying issues, right? And they just weren't talked about. Since you've been practicing for over 13 years, have you seen a transition to people willing to come talk to a professional, have a conversation when when they have anxiety, when they're suffering from depression, clinical depression? Um, have you seen a move in society over the last 13 years just willing to embrace and get diagnosed with these issues, accept them, and try and work through them?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, yes, the stigma is still there and that's loud and clear, but I think that people are becoming more educated. There have been, unfortunately, you know, Robin Williams, you know, people that were
Yeah.
dear and near to the community, when they passed away from mental illness, it was a shock. And,
Mm.
you know, I think it kind of opened the door for people to understand, like, you can also be sad too. You don't have to be like movie sad, but you can be like sad, and that means you might be depressed. Also, you know, just in general, healthcare professionals being more educated on mental health has been a big one. You know, if you go to your primary care physician, you tell them I'm starting to feel really down or very anxious. You know, now there's, you know, programs or practices that are now referring out to therapists in the community, just being more open. I think, um, you know, in general, just speaking out loud about feelings, also, you know, teaching our kids to talk about their feelings, that movement that you say that, you know, we weren't,
Yeah.
or, you know, your generation didn't talk about feelings. And I find
No.
a lot of adults, I find older adults having a really hard time expressing their feelings because they were taught that's, you know, you don't have your feelings. You hold them inside and you keep it moving. You're productive.
Yeah.
Keep
Right.
producing, right? You're a productive human being. Um, but now I think that, you know, again, healthcare professionals, people being more aware that it's not, doesn't mean that just because you have symptoms that you have to go to a psychiatric hospital. There's plenty of outpatients, even primary care physicians can prescribe certain levels of medications. I think that's really opened the door for a lot of people to kind of start seeking out help.
I
So
was
And
listening. I'm sorry.
go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
Rob. No, I was just saying, so
I
as we're coming out of this sort of COVID-19 situation and things are opening up, are there concerns that there's like a PTSD that people are going to have dealing with the repercussions of this? Or is there sort of, in your mind, a good way to approach getting back into society when we're allowed to commingle with more than 10 people in a setting or something like that? Any sort of game plan that you would recommend for people?
I definitely think that people should start at least having the conversation either with other family members in their household or friends about, you know, what they really feel like going into community. I have had that conversation with not just colleagues but families and friends about what it would look like to go back into the community. And some people are over it, I'm ready to go, and some people
Yeah,
are really scared, who don't even have the high risk factors, are just really scared because of, you know, they know somebody who got it, may have known people who passed away from it, or know somebody of somebody of somebody that passed away from it. Um, and I think that people need to just start just going outside. Maybe not going outside to like an outdoor dining, which we're allowed to do now. Maybe just take a walk downtown in those areas where restaurants are. Maybe if you're feeling that anxious, almost like slow, like reintroduction, right? You don't have to, you know, go and sit down at a restaurant if you don't want to, but maybe go out into the community.
yeah,
Continue to be educated. You know, CDC is always updating, you know, what their recommendations are. Go to facts, you know, read, you know, the websites that have facts on what recommendations are to go outside. And then if you're really starting to feel really anxious about it, then talk to your doctor about it, you know, or talk to a trusted friend about your serious concerns about going to the community. I think at this point, it's about exposure and just having to kind of slowly, if you feel like you need to reintegrate yourself that way, then start to do that. You know, taking walks out. If you haven't been to the park, go to the park, see people, other
yeah.
people, not your neighborhood people.
so
And I think that will help.
so let me ask you. I heard this from a doctor, a psychiatrist one time. They were talking, and they were saying, like, we're talking about, like Rob's talking about PSTs. Everyone's very anxiety, has a lot of anxiety around COVID-19 and 2020 in general, and the ability not to get all this out. So he was like, your feelings and emotions are like, imagine if you keep them all inside. It's like, you ever take a beach ball and put it under the water in a pool, and then you let it go and it just pops out,
Mhm.
right? Like eventually the ball's going to pop out of the water, right? So it's how can we convey all these feelings and anxiety in a positive way, like to release it through talking to professionals if you need an issue, talking to family members, and not like all of a sudden, you know, you have someone says something and you fly off the handle. And it's really not about what they said. It's about you holding all these emotions inside you. You agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, reality is everyone copes differently, right? Every
Right.
single human being deals with the exact same event completely different. You could have 4 people in a household and 4 different people react completely different to this pandemic, right? You can have the person who's not concerned, the person who thinks that this isn't real, the person who's hiding, doesn't want to go to the grocery store. And then you have the person who's like in between, you know, not sure how to react. I think that the number one thing, you know, because this is a trauma for everybody, right? Everybody was slightly traumatized from this. We have to remember that we went from one extreme to the next. By beginning of March to the end of March, we were all indoors, not allowed to go outside, right? We were told, don't leave your house. This is bad. And that's scary. You go from one routine to the next. You have offices closing. You have all of a sudden you have to only a certain amount of people out in the stores. People are waiting in line for groceries. We've never seen that here in the United States. I mean, other countries have experienced outbreaks before and have, you know, had measures, but here in America, we've never seen anything like this. Or limitations to buying things. That's traumatic for people, not being able to access your basic things that you want all the time, right? The idea that you're told you can't have this. I think that was like very stressful for a lot of people. But one of the things that people have to remember, and I think that with the pandemic, there came out some positives, right? We slowed down as human beings, right? We were forced to kind of take a step back and review our routines because they had changed dramatically. We went from super busy to maybe not so busy, depending on what you're doing. I've been very busy, but other people have not, right? And that's very, very stressful. And I think that everyone in general, as human beings, we forget to just take care of ourselves, right? And taking care of yourselves can mean just take 5 minutes, take a couple of deep breaths are probably the most easiest thing you can do to kind of slow, not just your heart rate, but just to slow you down. And there's apps, and if you're really not able to do it on your own, there's YouTube videos, there's apps everywhere
Right.
that have how to breathe, you know, slow down your breathing. Just also take a break from social media, the TV, the radio, podcasts that talk about all the horrible things that are happening with COVID. Not podcasts like this where you're trying to educate people.
This is a positive one.
This is a positive. But I think that, and this is something I've told my patients all the time from the very beginning, and a lot of them had action in the last couple weeks, said that it has reduced their stress a lot. Not looking at the news.
Right.
You don't
That's the
have to
biggest.
listen. Yeah.
I swear, if I watch the news too much, like I literally, yeah, it affects me. I end up watching HGTV because everyone's always happy at the end.
Yeah. And there's like a project, right? There's like stuff
There's
to
a
it.
project.
It's like satisfying.
Yeah, and everyone smiles at the end. It's really a good show. Good channel. But yeah, it's like happy. So yeah, the too much news. I think too much news, information feeds. We get beeps on our phone because a certain politician said something. There was an earthquake on the other side of the world. Like we have all this information that we can possibly digest. I think that's an amazing piece of advice. Just sort of like just shut it off. Rob's really good at that. Rob
Yes.
is really good at
I just turn it off.
Rob,
No problem.
no problem.
I think in the beginning too, we were all like, what's happening next? How many people are getting sick? Just for New Jersey, what's Governor Murphy going to say? What is the next step? What's going to happen with the schools? What's going to happen with my job? It was just like, what? It was too much. I mean, I at one point was like starting to feel like I'm in trouble.
I know. I was watching those YouTube videos every day of the press conference. I was like, I think that's the third time he wore that jacket. Like you should not know that much about your governor. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, yeah. And then eventually I just had to tap out, and I'll just, get a couple, read up on it at nighttime and get that day's headlines. This way you're not so much into it, like you're saying. It's not healthy.
It's not.
Is there
I mean, it's like
anything?
anything else. All negative actually makes you want think negative. So if you're receiving a lot of negativity all the time, naturally your mind will go into a negative state, and that's so much harder to get out of than to just be positive. Look at the bright side. It's kind of hard to look at
Yeah.
the bright side when everybody's telling you this is really awful, all these bad things are happening, oh my God, and then people's opinions on the media and rumors and spitting out information without really researching it, can make anybody really stressed.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
It's nonstop too, so you can't avoid it. But
Mm-mm.
is there anything going forward that healthcare workers are doing differently based on this that you've seen, or is it kind of still we're trying to digest everything, such a new phenomenon that we've been exposed to? But
Since we're still kind of in the midst of it, it's not over, right?
right.
I think that we can see more what will happen later once it's actually over, quote unquote. And I don't know what over really is going to look like or what that
Yeah,
means.
that's a good point.
But with healthcare workers, I think that we forget that they also get stressed, and constant stress is no good for anybody. Trauma of seeing people really sick or dying, the environment they're in for hours. I mean, a typical nurse shift could go for 12 hours. At practices, I think that the environment change of having to wear extra gear when you're seeing patients, or also, your own fear of somebody saying they may have symptoms of COVID coming in. We're all human beings. So even if you are a healthcare worker and have seen horrific things on a daily basis, or work at a regular practice and just see people get sick, or know that, your patient passed away, all sad things. But this was like a hard hit all at once. And, even trauma nurses experience trauma. You're seeing all these bad things. So I think in general in healthcare, we're going to see the effects of the workers later. But I also believe that the reopening of things and, practices resuming procedures, resuming, regular visits, physicals, kind of makes you feel a little bit safer. Things are going back to routine a little bit. And might make people feel really good, or you might feel really anxious about that. So again, it's hard to gauge. I think that we're going to see the trauma effects definitely in the next couple months, like anxiousness. Maybe in the fall, we always have an uptick of colds and flus and not necessarily COVID. And I think that once you start to see people start to get sick with your basics, that's when we're going to start to see people may realize then, oh, I did have a little trauma. Like, I am really anxious about this. I didn't deal with that at all. I kind of moved on and erased it from my mind. So we'll see in the next couple of months if any triggers come up, and then we'll go from there.
I have a question for you, Veronica. So I always curious because how you set the partition wall. So I don't know if, I guess it's something you got to learn when you first started practicing, but so you deal with people and their problems that are vast, like from prison population you've dealt with, substance abuse problems you've dealt with, all types of things. So how do you shut it off? And like, hey, I'm going to dinner in 3 hours with some friends. We're gonna have a great night tonight. And you've just heard this horrific story. Like, how long did it take you to sort of, for your own mental sanity to, that's it. I'm off work. I got to leave it over there. Like if
Or can you?
whatever. Yeah, or can you? Like, has that been a skill you've been able to develop?
So I had a wonderful my first supervisor at my job. I had just started working with kids who were really emotionally disturbed in very low income areas, lots of trauma. I had read about it. I come from a low income family, so I've lived in the project. So for me, seeing those things was not a problem, but working with people face to face, I remember my first job, I think after like 2 or 3 months, my supervisor noticed that I was getting a little stressed. She said that I looked like I had lost a little bit of weight. And she pulled me into her office and I said that, she's like, so how do you feel? I was like, no, I feel fine. Like, you think you feel fine? And then we started talking and I told her that I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed with everything I was seeing, hearing all the time. And I felt helpless. Um, and then the next question she asked me, which nobody had asked me before this, even in grad school. So how are you going to take care of yourself? How are you going? What are you going to do when you go home right now? I don't know, just go home and eat dinner. No. What are you going to do to take care of yourself?
Mm.
I don't know. And we started talking about self-care and meditating and taking deep breaths, using the same skills that I teach people. She's like, you can use them on yourself. Huh? Now you know all these things now. So use it on yourself. And I started to do that. Oops. Sorry, my
It
earpiece
happened.
fell out of my ear.
It happens. Don't worry about it.
So I started doing yoga. I started doing meditations. I also just started to, when 5 o'clock came, turn it off. Turn it off. The day is over. That was the one thing she said.
Yeah.
At 5 o'clock, your day is over. It's over. It's done. You did it. So
It's the
now
only.
what are you going to do to take care for yourself? And that's the first thing I do when I go home is, or if I'm home, you know, I work from home a lot of days of the week as well. At 5 o'clock, shut it off. I move on. I go make dinner. I go outside. I do
Right.
what makes me happy. Self-care,
It's
number one
it's
thing we're telling people to do.
if you don't take care of yourself, you won't be able to take care of your patients over the long term.
Yeah, it's like when the
Exactly.
oxygen masks fall from the plane, you got
I
to do
was just
yours
gonna say
first,
that.
then the child. So,
Right,
I mean, that's,
right.
I use that analogy all the time. I say, what is
yeah,
the first thing they tell you on an airplane? When if there's an emergency and the mask come down, you have to put it on yourself. If you don't
right.
put it on yourself, you're gonna pass out before you even get to the next person to help, and then get it on yourself. Even
Right.
if you have your kids next to you, even if you have an elderly parent, it doesn't matter. If you don't put your mask on first, you're not gonna help anybody.
Right.
And that was one of the things she also said many years ago. And I've always make sure that I have some positive plans. Not every evening. I mean, I do try to see my girlfriends once a month. We try to go out and decompress a little bit, you know, go to dinner, have positive activities always scheduled. Also be mindful of what I'm scheduling for myself. You know, try not to overpack myself because I'm a human being and I also get overwhelmed and overtired and exhausted. So I also take breaks, take my vacations, take days off if I'm feeling already kind of weary, like I'm not in the mood. I know for me, that's my trigger to tell me you need a day off. So schedule a day
Right.
off, and you don't have to go to the beach. You don't have to do something. Just turn off for a day.
Yeah. I can imagine. Yeah, you have to have tools in order to be successful at what you're doing, and those sound pretty awesome. They really do. Definitely. Rob, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I mean, as parents, you know, who have kids at home, is there things we should be on the lookout for specifically, both now, you know, and then down the road after we're kind of out back in public, that we should be just cognizant of, just to make sure we're not missing anything? Um,
I strongly encourage parents to start talking to their kids about how they feel now.
yeah,
Um, Not wait until you go to the park for the first time or you're going to a friend's house for the first time because your kid may have a reaction then. Um, Start talking to your kids now, even if they're 3, you know, 2, 4, or if they're even 18, 19, 20. Talk to your kids about how are they feeling? How did they
yeah,
feel about all of this? How do they feel about going outside? You know, and then from there, that's how you'll know what's going on. You know, give them facts about, you know, maybe what, if they want to know what did happen, what are we doing now to stay safe? What are we doing to stay safe? As long as they know what we're doing to stay safe in the community, I think that that will reduce anxiety. And just pay attention to your kids. Your kids may have a full-blown tantrum over something so simple, but it's really because they're upset. You know, they're stressed.
Yeah.
Ask them, and then be a role model. If your kid is telling you, or they're having a really bad day, and you're just like, what is going on with this kid today? I have a 10-month-old, so I sometimes I look at him like, what's going on with you, brother? But then I'm like, okay, he's just a baby, so But I also try to model. I encourage parents to model then self-care. If you say, for instance, your coping skill is you go outside and listen to great music, right? If that's a good coping skill for you, then go outside with your kids and listen to great music. Um, whatever it is that you do to make yourself feel better, obviously non-drug wise,
Yeah.
you have your kids do with you. You you model with them. If you meditate, then meditate with them, or teach them how to take deep breaths. Do it with them. Model good, positive coping skills, and I think that will be not just detrimental for what's happening right now, just how to deal in the future with other bad things that happen, because bad things happen all the time, and they just
Absolutely.
have to learn how to
Absolutely.
deal with it.
Absolutely.
Does the mental health community worry about one major issue down the road coming from this? Is there anything specific, or like I said before, it's still so new to us, there's not really, we're just taking it all in as it comes?
We're all just taking it as it comes. Reality
Yeah.
is, we already know that the mental health community itself is going to have issues coming from this, right? The
Right.
isolation, the lack of maybe supports that they had before, reintegrating back into programs, right? There's day programs that people go to all day. Um, that's going to be a struggle, I think, for anybody who may not have had mental health issues in the past, may now have mental health issues,
Yeah.
underlying issues that they've always had, but this was, the tipping point. Um, obviously with other big trauma events around the world, we always see a rise of suicide.
Mhm.
That's just, an unfortunate consequence to extreme situations like this, right?
That's
And
what
you're and
I'm really worried about that.
and then the constant media attention. If you're seeing people post, so and so killed themselves, a famous person killed themselves. People in the community might, I know from my patients right now, one of the biggest triggers is people talking about suicide. That's traumatic for people. Not everybody can handle somebody coming to you and saying, I feel like ending my life. So I think that that's always a concern anytime something dramatic, and trauma like this, that there's going to be a rise in suicide. It happened with 9/11. So we'll see. I mean, I think that what was maybe almost 20 years ago, people weren't as open to mental health support and
Yeah.
looking for help.
Right, right.
Maybe that
Right.
might change. I'm hopeful. And if we continue the teletherapy, it might allow people who are at work, right, instead of taking a day off or a couple hours of work, be able to log into a session, take their lunch at that time, and talk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The suicide thing, I really think is might be one of the biggest issues to come out of this, because when people lose their livelihoods, when people, their identity as the provider for the family, it really, history tells us, even in depressions, even in downward economic cycles, you'll see pops in suicide on,
Mm-hmm.
down the road. After the CDC analyzes all this stuff, you get a report like a year or two later, you'll hear an article about it. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's game on for your industry to just try and help as many people that you can get in contact with, because history shows us downturns in economic cycles, upturns
Mm-hmm.
in suicide. That's going to be tough for a lot of people, a lot of
And
good people,
mm-hmm. and people who may not have seemed depressed. I mean, everyone, right, presents what they want to present. You as a human being can have a really bad day and go to work or go home and nobody will know, because you can hide that, right?
Mm,
Um, but as if we want to be more specific about, middle-aged people, the economy took a hit, right? So if you had a business, you may have lost that business. That's horrible. Your retirement funds may have went down because all these years of working, right? Depending on what your retirement plans are, if they're stocks, stocks went down, you lost money. Um, the maybe not having a job, putting into early retirement without having a real plan. That was not your plan. All these things, obviously, finances is always a big one, for depression, and suicide. Again, your age group, not that you guys are old, but you're middle aged. You may have known people lose a lot of people with COVID, right? Older parents,
Right, right.
that's a big trend with middle age. Their parents were either living in some facility and they lost their life, right? Not being able to do funerals, all these things, like everything that's happening, it's like almost an accumulation.
It is.
So
Yeah.
it's just a lot.
I mean, can you imagine losing a loved one and not being able to have closure that society, with funerals like we do, it's like a double whammy. Sometimes you just need that closure that comes with that, and families gather, you get emotional support from people you haven't seen in a long time, immediate family. It's just it's got to be heartbreaking. I mean, it's just heartbreaking.
So
we were
And then,
we were
also,
go ahead.
sorry.
we were just saying before you jumped on that there was a meme going around that we don't want a season 2 of 2020. Like,
No.
it's like, oh my God, we just, we got to get to January. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Rob. Sorry.
No, but I was going to say,
No,
well, suppose
go
I'm
ahead.
a middle-aged person watching this, and I don't know how I'm dealing with this whole COVID-19 situation. Is there a good resource to turn to kind of walk me through if I'm feeling certain emotions, if I don't have access to like a mental health worker directly? Is there a good place to start that you would say to kind of assess your situation so you can go from there?
I always discourage people, don't Google your symptoms. It will always tell you bad things.
Yeah.
Don't do that. That's not good. Because it can tell you all kinds of bad things.
Sure.
I I always tell people, if you are not sure if you're stressed or concerned, or you're not sure how you're really feeling, take some time, sit down, and write them down.
Okay.
Write down your feelings. What are you feeling? Am I really stressed? Am I concerned? And I guess when we see it on paper, it tends to
True.
be,
Yeah.
now we can see, okay, all right, I have concerns, but there are national hotlines that were created very specifically for COVID. You don't have to have a mental health issue. You don't need to have insurance for it. It is a mental health hotline. A lot of the National Mental Health Association have, very specific hotlines for COVID-19. And then, you can reach out, and that could also be a way for you to figure out, with that clinician on the other line, am I really depressed? Or am I feeling overly anxious, overly stressed? And also your provider, you can call your PCP, you can tell them, hey, I'm feeling a certain type of way, can I come in? And talk it out with a friend, somebody you really trust, and maybe you'll realize with talking it out loud, because sometimes when we keep things in our mind, we're not really processing it. If you're either writing it down or verbalizing it, people then start to realize, wow, I'm really not okay. So maybe I do need to get some extra support.
Veronica, have you seen a spike in pharmaceuticals that are like depression? I know some of the name brands we know, like these Xanax, but I'm sure there's a whole group of them that we don't know the names of. But have you seen a spike in those type of drugs amongst patient populations during this, or no?
What I am seeing from the patients that are prescribed Xanax right now, that have been prescribed pre-COVID, more reports of needing to use it more.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So not necessarily that they're being prescribed Xanax, or I'm talking more specifically to the patients who already were using Xanax as a need basis, have been reporting needing it more. So that's when we reassess medication. I also have seen a report of patients already taking anti-anxiety medications or depression medications, feeling more depressed, more anxious, now needing to review medication, maybe get an increase or add an additional medication to their regimen for now. And, obviously anything you add or reduce or increase is not forever. It could always, if you're feeling great and you want to try to go down in the future, you can do that.
Right.
But for patients specifically already taking medications, yes, there has been a difference in the last couple of weeks about wanting either more or needing to take Xanax more frequently because they're just not able to manage.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Interesting.
So Rob,
So this is great. I mean, this is,
yeah,
we looked at the physical side of this with the last podcast. This is such a
yes,
good
yes.
complement to that, with the mental side. So no, this is very, very helpful, I think, and perhaps we'll put some resource information on the podcast that people can refer to. So
Yeah,
if they
maybe
are
some,
having questions, like
maybe,
hotlines or things of that nature. So
yeah.
yeah, this has been very helpful.
In closing, Veronica, what would you just like to tell our audience out there about this issue, just, as we wind down here?
Understand that everything is temporary. This is just a small time in our lives where things, happen and bad things happen. This is something that we can call a bad thing. We want to simplify it. But don't forget to just check in with yourself, even if you have kids, you're taking care of loved ones. Go check yourself out. Take a moment, really assess how are you feeling, and remember to always take self-care. Self-care is free. You can do all whatever it is that makes you happy. If it's gardening, these are just examples. Swimming. Take time. It doesn't have to be every single day. Maybe once a month, twice a month. Just remember to take care of yourself. Your body can only take on so much before it starts to kind of fight you back. So just, remember, your health comes first. Just like Rob reminded us, we have to put the mask on first. So you can't
Right.
run on, on fumes. You have on fumes. You have to run on a full tank of gasoline, if not half. Once you reach half, I say, take a break. Let's start taking care of
Absolutely.
yourself.
Well, I love the idea of
Absolutely.
writing stuff down. I think that's, what's currently affecting my life, what's causing me stress, writing that down. A lot of times that puts it right in front of you to the way you put it. And it doesn't necessarily make it not as bad, but at least you're sort of being able to see it and then take steps from there to improve, I think is helpful. So I think that was great.
Absolutely,
Great.
Rob. Absolutely. Well, we'd like to thank Veronica for coming on. We really
Yeah, thanks so
appreciate
much.
it. And thank everyone for listening to the Help Me I'm Middle Aged podcast. Just a simple reminder to please scroll down, hit the subscribe button, share on your social media feeds, hit the like button. We really appreciate it. We're trying to have a community of people come together, have very interesting conversations, and if you could spread it around, we'd appreciate it. Once again, thank you, Veronica, and we'll catch everyone next time. Thanks.